Hello and welcome to what will be my weekly breakdowns of The Last of Us Season 2. So be sure to subscribe so we can watch the season together. And there's a lot to talk about. You know, the first time I watched this episode, it was hard to watch Ellie be so mean to Joel. I was like, I don't know how much of this I can take. And I couldn't understand why she was being so irresponsible. But then I had to watch it again to do my notes. And it was fascinating, in fact. Not only was I able to recognize the astounding quality of the episode, but I could not only see her perspective, where Ellie was coming from, but it made me rethink my position as to whether or not Joel did the right thing at the end of season 1. And I never thought that I would rethink that. I was like, Joel was right. I don't want to hear that he was wrong. But now I'm like, I think you might have made a major oopsie, Joel. But, you know, we can't go back. We can't change what we did. And Joel, I would never, ever say it out loud. Ever. But that doesn't mean we can't learn from the past. And Joel, what his real problem is that despite going to therapy, he hasn't learned. So what does he say to Maria? If our lifeboat, the town, is in danger of capsizing, being overrun, to save ourselves, we got to do what's got to be done, which means let all those survivors die. And that's the exact same mentality he had back at the hospital. He's had that mentality for a very long time, and it served him well. But now, I think the difference is that he's never had to face the victims of his actions before. He's always moved on. But now Ellie and also Gail are staring him right in the face, and they are not very happy with him. But Ellie, I think I've been thinking about it, particularly the second time I watched this episode, because I couldn't understand her behavior. Why are you being so mean to Joel? Why are you being so irresponsible? And it occurred to me that she was prepared to die when they reached the hospital, and that she felt her purpose in life was to save humanity. But now she didn't save humanity. Her immunity seems to be worthless, and she's living a life she never planned to live. That's fascinating. And I think she's lost. I think she's very, very lost. And I think that is what explains her behavior. Okay, before we dig into the details, there's so much to dig into. But first, I want to go over the headlines. Woohoo! We have some major threats that have emerged. 3 of them. One, of course, obviously, is Abby from the game. Abby's here already, and she's coming for Joel. But there's 2 new threats, totally new from the game. And that's always fun, because it's a surprise for all of us then. I watched the cutscenes before season 2, so I would be ready to go. So I appreciate them mixing it up for us. So there's that fungus in the pipe, which is apparently drawn to the warmth of the sparkler. As soon as I saw it in the pipe at the beginning of the episode, I freaked out. I was like, oh my God, get it away from us. I mean, now, I looked it up, and it turns out, I don't do a lot of construction, obviously, and it turns out that roots and vines do grow in pipes, particularly sewer pipes for nutrition. Ew! Okay, but it's pretty common. But those roots, as soon as I saw them, I was like, that looks a lot like the fungi that's trying to kill us. I would have burned it just to be safe. I would have burned it. I mean, that pipe's already damaged. I'd be like, get me a match. All right, so if that is a sewer pipe, I also wonder if those things are going to start coming up the toilet. I'd be concerned. And where are they coming from? And how can that fungus survive that far outside of a human body or totally removed from one? Where does that pipe lead? Where is that fungus coming from? Nobody knows, because it's not from the game. So we're all going to find out together. Big change. Big change. I like it. And speaking of big changes, Smarter Infected is also a big change, which I totally understand. When I watched The Last of Us Part 2 cutscenes, the infected became almost an afterthought, like pest control. Characters were having conversations as they hunted and killed them. They were like, what'd you do this weekend? Got one. So I think making them more dangerous is a very good change. They had almost become superfluous to the story. I'm sure some of you are like, dear Grace, that's not the way it was at all. But that's how it came across to me. So I'm glad that they changed that. Obviously, Ellie is not only dealing with a lot of stuff which is making her reckless, but she's also immune. and that's contributing to her recklessness. She doesn't take the infected seriously because she doesn't feel she has to. This changes that. But even if I were immune, I wouldn't want that little worm-like piece of fungus that was wriggling around in the bite inside of me. I guess she has no choice. Oh my God, I think she should have tried harder to get it out. It was so bad. Will it die inside of her? Will it keep wriggling around in there and come out some other way? I mean, if I were Dina, I'd be a little nervous. Could that fungus spread via a kiss? Or a sneeze? Whew, you got a little something on your face there, infected woman. Whew, I felt very bad for her. I mean, you could feel her fighting the control of the fungus. But it was a losing battle. She was not doing well. Maybe she's doing okay because she was smarter. She was a little bit better. And her nose, by the way, her nose was missing and those cuts looked very fresh. I'm thinking bear damage. I think that bear got her. I will add, though, that Ellie's kills with the knife were much better in the game. Here, Ellie, for all of her practice, and she was very good in her starter fight, but here, she seemed to really struggle taking down that infected, and she certainly didn't make it quick. I was like, are you sure you're ready for the field? That looked awful. In the game, she was a pro. She was stronger, she was smoother. It was like butter, the way she was cutting those infected. Here, it was like, oh my God, it was so bad. All right, so now let's talk about characters. And of course, we got to start with the new ones. I am particularly impressed with Isabela Merced as Dina. She is so good. We have seen Merced in a lot of stuff at this point. Some would say perhaps too much. She's a little overexposed, but I've never seen her do as good a job as she does here. She lights up the screen and has great chemistry with both Ellie and Joel, but her dynamic with Ellie, I find particularly interesting. They're seen together at the start of Patrol. It's almost like two dudes talking, about what are you going to do about the party, man? Even though they're talking about their romantic interests and their romantic lives. Although dudes, of course, would never say that. But this conversation was very well done. And I think that plays a lot into the overall theme of this episode, and I suspect this season, of women wanting to stand shoulder to shoulder with men. We'll talk about that. It's really fascinating. But again, as I said, right now we're doing characters. So Gail, wow, HBO could and perhaps should have its own awards show because they have a plethora of amazing performances. We just got done with The White Lotus season 3, where there's way too many people to compete for Emmys. And now here comes Catherine O'Hara with her own incredible monologue. Oh my goodness. Like, wow, I was blown away by this monologue. I think Catherine O'Hara finally won an Emmy for her show. I'm not sure if I can say it on YouTube, but great show, very good show. But I could see her maybe winning again. This performance, it's hard. Again, there's too much good streaming. The Emmys the television categories have become ridiculous. But she's very good. I think she just shot to the front of the line. So Gail is a new character, but her dead husband, Eugene, not a new character. He's from the game. We never actually saw him, but he did grow and deal weed, which we see here because that's how Joel is paying for his session. Where'd he get it from? I'm sure they'll explain because it's already been revealed that they have cast a Eugene, and he will be showing up in a flashback. They're going to have, I think, the game had a lot of flashbacks as well. There's going to be a lot of flashbacks in this season, and I suspect the next one. Now, there are some excellent hints at Eugene here already, and his shadow definitely still hangs heavy over this house, where his wife still lives, and now his killer visits. Ooh, it's downright poetic. Apparently, Eugene got infected, and of course, he had to be taken down, but the way Joel killed him was particularly cruel. Sounds like Joel. Gail forcing herself to say the horrible thing out loud. What an incredible monologue. What an incredible idea to put something you've buried deep inside of you that you're afraid to say and to force yourself to say it out loud so that you can confront it and attempt to heal. It's incredibly well written and it was incredibly well delivered. I was just in awe of this scene. Might be my favorite scene in the episode because it's new partially, but it's just, I was captivated by it in every conceivable way. So what is the deep down horrible thing that Gail needs to say out loud? That she hates Joel for what he did. And it's understandable. They find themselves in an impossible, horrible position. Apparently the apocalypse ain't nothing but impossible, horrible positions. And this game and show is real good at dreaming them up. Real good at it. Whew. But this is where, and then it gets even more interesting. So after she admits that, she says, but I want to get over it. I want to be able to help you, Joel. Let me help you. But how can you trust the outstretched hand of help of someone who's just told you they hate your guts? I wouldn't do it, Joel. I think it's a major mistake. I think he maybe was on the verge of doing it, but then he was like, she really hates me. Aren't there any holy people in town that Joel could speak to? I think maybe that would be a little bit of a better idea. It is odd that the show that this show decided to create a therapist for Joel to talk to instead of a holy person. Gail could have been someone of faith. Because, and this leads to me another, I'll say the horrible thing out loud. I'm a little afraid to say it because, the times that we live in right now. But I just think what's interesting is that I see a very interesting contrast, particularly with this episode, of a very conservative Western style piece of entertainment, but that is populated with liberal characters and ideas. That to me is fascinating. I'm like, look, it's like if you took Tyler Sheridan and merged him with Mike White. And I think that's a pretty intoxicating idea. I think that's one of the reasons The Last of Us has such a big audience, because it has broad appeal. But I also think that's why it gets under so many people's skin on both sides. And so this show gets to you. And I think that's part of why it does. And I don't think it's always obvious right away. I just think I was like, wow, this is so fascinating. All right, so Gail knows Joel isn't telling her everything. She's onto him. She knows. I'm glad, she's drinking during their session. I mean, again, she had good reason, but she doesn't seem like the most professional therapist. So the fact that she is good at her job and she sniffed him out makes me feel a little better about her. And maybe makes Joel a little bit nervous. He's like, oh, she's good. And again, I don't think Joel should tell her. I think that would be a huge mistake on his part. But Joel needs to stop lying to those he's close to. Why can't he tell Ellie and his brother maybe that he's in therapy? Why does he make Dina swear to secrecy? I think that would be helpful. And he needs to stop lying to himself. Ellie isn't just an angry 19-year-old. He did something wrong. He did save someone. I thought it was very touching and noble when he stood up and said that, and heartbreaking, because it's true, but it's not true. He saved someone, but he saved someone who didn't want to be saved. I'm curious what ideology that fits into. That seems to me like more of a liberal idea. And that's the clash between, it's maybe generational as well. It's fascinating. It took me, I told you, I never thought I would have the epiphany of understanding where Ellie's coming from. But I did. I opened myself up to Ellie's truth. And I finally heard her loud and clear. I wish Joel would do the same. As I said, it's another horrible, complicated, complex situation that The Last of Us dreamed up. And that's the core one, of course. This horrible secret and this betrayal between Joel and Ellie. And it has sustained 2 games, and it's really an amazing thing that they came up with. It's just the heart of this whole concept. And while obviously everybody made mistakes back at that hospital, the biggest by far was the Fireflies, making the decision for Ellie and Joel to sacrifice her life. Once they figured out that she wouldn't be able to survive the operation, they never wanted to wake her up again. I think if they'd only asked Ellie, if they'd only had faith in her, and Ellie and Joel had a chance to say goodbye, then maybe the apocalypse would be over and none of this additional stuff would have happened. But again, that's a recurring theme of this game and now this show, that violence only brings about more violence. The Fireflies' choice, it led to their deaths, the deaths of many of them. And now those who were left, they want vengeance, more violence. That's right, Abby and her crew are here. And I gotta tell you, as someone who just watched the cutscenes, I kind of fangirled out when I saw her crew. I was like, oh, there they are. Oh. It was too short an introduction. I'm sure many of you were like, who are these people? They're amazing. All right, so because the introduction was so short, I think Tati Gabriel and Danny Ramirez stand out the most because they have the familiar faces. But it's this guy, Spencer Lord, playing Owen, who's going to be the real superstar. One of my favorite characters from part 2, the part 2 of the game. Just really incredible. The way this character evolves, well, you learn more about him. Such a treat. Such a great guy. As for Abby herself, as I've been saying for a while, I have not liked the casting of Kaitlyn Dever as it's come across in the ad campaign. But as soon as I saw her here, immediately, first scene, when I saw the sadness and rage just radiating off of her and burrowing deep inside her, I was like, that's Abby. I think very well cast. And this show, it's an extremely well-made show. And so it really is. It's a show that you can, I often have to rewatch shows and movies for work, but I would encourage you to watch these episodes more than once because they're just that strong. Or watch my breakdowns. Although I love it when I hear I love it when we play off each other. I love hearing your own thoughts and observations down below. But when Dina says at the end of the episode that everyone should be terrified of Ellie, and they should be, right? But then they cut to Abby because they should be terrified of Abby too. That is just incredible. That the line that Dina speaks is for both of them. Oh, I love it. Which leads me to two questions. One, can a daughter fill the shoes of a father? I love that question. I love it. But that leads me to question two. Is there a large enough audience that's interested in the answer? I'm a little worried about it. I love 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 it. It's the very idea of a Western, fathers and sons, but it's switching it out for daughters. I believe Neil Druckmann has daughters, and I wonder if that's one of the things that inspired him. To understand this story, you need to realize that Ellie and Abby are two sides of the same coin. That's why they intentionally cast two actresses who look so much alike. Now, I don't want to give away Abby's secrets if you haven't played the game. So for now, let's focus on Ellie 5 years later. She's been training, and I think she's gotten very good. They didn't Mary Sue her either. She got one heck of a bloody nose, and it was a struggle. But I think she just, sometimes they say in fights, the other person wanted it more, and Ellie really wants it. But I think the reason she was so upset when she found out that punch was pulled intentionally was because, again, it's like Joel, what he did to her. People trying to do nice things for her behind her back without telling her. I think she's developed, understandably, a phobia about it. And it's still going on even with Joel. He continues to work behind the scenes to meddle in her life, meddling in her patrols and her relationships. He feels he's protecting her so bad. But the difficult truth is that Ellie doesn't want Joel to protect her anymore. She wants to be Joel. Well, she doesn't want to actually be Joel. I think that's one of the reasons that she doesn't like people saying she looks like one of the characters from his favorite action movie franchise. And there is like a little bit of there is a father-daughter dynamic between them, but she doesn't want to be Joel Jr. She wants to be seen as being on the same level as Joel and having her own identity. She doesn't need Joel to protect her and Dina. She wants to be able to protect her girlfriend herself. Joel is trying to get through to her with this guitar. And it's annoying because they didn't set it up well. This guitar is so important from the game. It's like one of the major themes of the game, in fact. And here you'd be like, why are we spending so much time on this guitar? I think this is one area where I think the show didn't do a good job setting it up. And also, I don't think it's a very good approach. But I guess I understood that more a little bit here. It seems, I don't know. I guess Joel is doing the best he can, right? But I really honestly think the best thing that he could do would be to treat her like an equal and get ready for Epiphany City. We're coming back for another round. I think it's hard. I just love this show. I love how well thought out it is. I think it's, I'm often not someone who's very in touch with my own feelings and stuff. I think I've gotten better, in part from breaking down movies and shows like this. And also, I have to say, talking to you guys. And so I'm just loving, I'm like, I'm having such a good time playing like therapy. Like it's a game. And I'm being, obviously it's very serious, but it's like, I'm like, I see it. So Joel, why can't he treat her like an equal? Because he doesn't even feel like himself. He already had bad knees and hearing from the first season, but now 5 years later, his eyes are starting to go and his hand is hurting. Plus, clearly, not only are those things affecting his self-confidence, but I think the situation with Ellie is, and the whole town. He's desperate for validation, right? From Ellie, from Dina, from Gail. He's like, at least Dina makes me feel validated. But obviously Dina just really wants to repair Ellie's relationship with Joel because she knows that it's important to Ellie. But I think Joel has always been treated as a hero up until now, always looked up to. But now Ellie doesn't see that in him. She thinks less of him. And I think that not only is that shocking for him, like just a really horrible, shocking, unexpected new experience, but she does it in front of other people. So I think he feels, and maybe to some degree it has, but I don't think it's as bad as Joel imagines it. But I think he thinks that negative attitude, like the fungus, has infected the whole town. And everyone thinks he's a loser. He's just a shell of a man. And I can understand, again, as I said, both of their perspectives. It's just all very well thought out and all very, very sad. Oh, it's so sad. All right, so back to Ellie, though, who has her journals as well, also from the game. Bella Ramsey was recently diagnosed as being autistic, which they welcomed. Bella Ramsey uses they, them pronouns. And they said it made them feel more whole. It really answered a lot of questions, or what they realized were questions that they had about themselves. Things that were unexplained, let's say. And I think that Ramsey's character, Ellie, shares some of those same qualities. For some reason on the dance floor sequence, do you know who she reminded me of? She reminded me of a dramatic Sheldon Cooper. I was like, oh, they're doing the Sheldon treatment on her to a degree. And you shouldn't mess with Sheldon Cooper either. And I thought that was interesting. And it's really wonderful to see people with autism become such, not only be well portrayed, but be heroes of stories and the ones that everybody loves. And come to think of it, Dina has a little bit of Penny vibes too, doesn't she? Isn't that interesting? There are recurring themes in entertainment and stories because they strike a nerve with people. They connect. And so that's why you see them repeated in different media and different stories. And I think that's very interesting. I think that's really fascinating. And I think one of the reasons that Ellie likes Dina is because of how Dina makes, speaking of how people make you feel, how Dina makes her feel, especially with what she says to her on the dance floor. Like she is Joel's equal, right? I mean, this is how Joel wants to be seen and spoken to himself. So as I said, The Last of Us, especially this season, is about women stepping into the shoes of men, right? Ellie, Dina says, she's competing with the men for Dina's attention. And you can see that when Ellie goads Dina into going into the supermarket. She's like, would you rather the men handle it? And they go in. And then when they later get reprimanded for going inside alone, Ellie says, Tommy and Joel would have gone in. And Tommy says, yeah, but that's different. And his wife, Maria, immediately snaps back. Why? I thought that was great. I think that these are really strong moments. And I think that as the show progresses, you'll be seeing even more of them. The supermarket sequence. I don't think it was a bear. I think maybe it was a moose. Do you remember? I'm sure some of you remember what it was. But there was a large animal that was taken down by a group of infected in the game. So that was cool to see them bring that in. But as for the supermarket sequence that follows, it's good because it brings some much needed action to the first episode, which, it's a lot of exposition, both emotionally in terms of what's going on in the story. And I think it really needed this action. And also you get shadows again of what life used to be like. Gossip magazines? Oh my goodness. Remember that this apocalypse started in 2003 before social media killed the supermarket checkout star. I remember magazines as well. In fact, I was in the supermarket like a couple of days ago. I was actually in New Jersey, and I was in the supermarket and I saw the magazines and I was like, oh, I used to read those, but I get that immediately on social media now. But also the flirting between Ellie and Dina is done very well, both verbally. Dina tells her a joke. I loved that. And physically, right? Their attraction to each other is also what's partially making them very sloppy in their hunting. I was like, ladies, let's focus on what we're doing. But that was great. But I think that both Ramsey and Merced carry themselves very well in this action sequence. I thought they both looked really cool. I was like, wow. For people who are kind of wearing like Patagonia and Land's End, you guys look amazing. Like you look like badass. That was cool. They try to hint at a love triangle with Jesse, but I mean, we'll see. You'll see how that's going to develop. But young Mazzino is from Beef, where he was fantastic. So I'm really glad to see him here. Finally, just like the second half of season 1, episode 1, where they established life in the quarantine zone, here we get to see what life has become in Jackson. The town is growing fast. And I got to say, part of me agrees with Joel, maybe a bit too fast, as in that it's becoming harder to control and protect. Ellie's a loose cannon, and there are all these new people coming in. How do you know that one hasn't just been bit? They're like, oh, this dog kind of was near the cart. I'm like, quarantine those people. No way. Also, now we got fungus coming into town through the pipes and smarter and infected. Oh my God. But I'm not surprised that Joel and Ellie, two big personalities who are both very driven and capable, have both become such big parts of the community. Ellie on patrols, and Joel, well, obviously he used to go on patrols because he took down Eugene, but with his physical and emotional issues that he's having right now, he's pulled back and he's focusing on construction And it just, in some ways, it almost seems like it was, before the apocalypse, because he had that construction business. I like the thing about the construction dial that his brother knew about it as well. I was like, yes, I want you to turn that construction dial to an 11. Or what do you need to turn it to an 11? And I got to tell you, I never really noticed the music in season 1 outside of the theme song. But this episode, both during the supermarket sequence and over the end credits, really stood out for me. Got the blood pumping. I was like, this is great. And I think it really elevates the show and it makes it feel like even more cinematic than it already does. So those are my thoughts on The Last of Us, Season 2, Episode 1. Oh, first time I watched it, I was a little frustrated. You might be feeling a little frustrated when you saw it. Hopefully I made you feel a little better. Second time, I can see it's just as nuanced and brilliant as Season 1. And I can't wait to watch this new season with you. We're going to have quite the adventure. All right, so again, share your thoughts down below. Be sure to subscribe. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.